already complex in the oldest places in the earth, with no evidence of where they came from. Because you see, for life to begin by random chance, out of the chemicals, for the first step of evolution, even though the modern evolutionist tries to deny it's part of evolution, the old evolutionists did not. They try to walk away from where did life come from. You can't. Because if evolution is change, the very first change that happened was things that are not alive becoming alive. Because if you don't have that, you don't have evolution, because there is nothing to change. It must be dealt with. But if life appears over the whole planet, in population, in short order, already developed, there's no way you have the warm little pond. Because what you have then is an improbable number of reproductions of an impossible event. If the biblical model of creation is true, we will expect to find similarities. Why? Because things that live underground have to breathe air. Animals, that is. Insects, reptiles, birds. For birds to fly, they all have to have a similar design of their wing. Why? We have a thing called aerodynamics. If the wing isn't shaped properly, they're not going anyplace. I don't care how hard they flap. There are certain traits within animals that fit their role within life, that are necessary to them. A lot of us take a look at a lion, and we see his big teeth up front. You know what those teeth do? It's amazing. Watch a lion eat an apple. He bites it with his front teeth. Watch a lion eat the ribs of an animal. He bites at them with his back teeth. A lot of people say, well, lions are carnivorous, they eat meat. Well, I hate to tell you, but during World War II, they didn't have any meat. Meat was rationed because of the war, and for years the lions lived on vegetables and grass without any trouble at all. If the biblical model of creation is true, we would expect to find no fossil that could be established as transitionary. That is, we may look at something and say, hey, that looks the same. But just because it looks the same doesn't mean it is the same. I could use the example of the evolution of the internal combustion engine from the first automobiles through jet planes. And say, see, one thing was based upon the other, and they all changed through the years. You only have one problem. Every one of those changes were made by intelligence as a result of experimentation. We would expect to see these things of a loving creator, but we would also expect to see aesthetics. We would expect to see color. We will expect to see beauty. Which are things that evolution, biology, cannot account for. Biology can't even account for family relationships, whether it be among humans or the animals that actually have families. And stick to family relationships. How do you explain it? You can't biologically. The history of evolution is a highway littered with dead theories. Theories that have been run down by experiment and by observation. But to the evolutionists, these discoveries are just one more thing to ignore. Tonight we're presenting a minimal of evidence due to limitations that will continue to expose the believers of evolution as not only poor philosophers but poor storytellers, writing material that belongs on the shelves next to the Brothers Grimm and Mother Goose. But they do not belong in a science textbook, they do not belong in a science classroom, and they do not belong in science at all. We intend to reveal that not only does the evolutionary community, I'm not talking about these two gentlemen in particular, the evolutionary community not only ignores experiment and evidence, but strives to conceal whatever does not agree with the theory, for the theory must live. I say these things up front, as I said, to motivate you to listen. I want you to take our evidence and prove us wrong, if you can. Let's look at some of the assumptions. The claim by evolutionists that the universe and the Earth is approximately 4.5 billion years old is based on dating methods. Those dating methods are based on assumptions. Those assumptions are wrong. Aristotle said that if you have the wrong information, you're going to come up with the wrong conclusion. It's that simple. Geologic timescale, what is it? How does it work? As you said, the Earth's crust consists of many layers of sedimentary rock. Geologists assume, watch that word assume. They assume that the many layers represent periods of time, typically millions of years. And this is based actually on a secondary assumption called uniformitarianism. That all things that happen today happen the exact same way throughout the past. First of all, I take one look at the world and there's no way I'm going to say that things are happening the same way today that they used to. I can see changes just in my own lifetime. Basically, Scottish geologist James Hutton set the stage for the development of the geologic timescale in the 18th century with his Theory of the Earth, published in 1785. Hutton advanced the idea of uniformitarianism, which was carried on and popularized by Charles Lyell. Now, how many of you believe that Charles Lyell and Hutton, at the end of the 17th century and early part of the 18th century, knew enough about the world to set up the geologic column? Because I will tell you, that column has not changed since they set it up. Are you going to tell me we have found nothing that says they made any mistakes? But the theory must live. Slide 22, yeah. As can be seen by the diagram, evolutionists theorize the deeper something is, the older it is. Which, if you're following a uniformitarian thinking, you're right. If uniformitarian thinking is correct. The question is it? In 1965, Edwin McKee, a geologist in Colorado, published a report on flash floods in Bijou Creek. 48 hours of torrential rain created a new valley 12 feet deep. 2 days. Fully stratified. That isn't something that took a long time, and it had particle striation. Particle striation, if you look at any pictures of strata, you'll notice there's lines. Well, those lines were told by the geologist are because the ground dried before the next layer went down. Yet this valley that McKee reports on, they were there. When did it dry? Between layers. I know all of you know about Mount St. Helens in 1980. How many of you know about the new canyon that was formed by Spirit Lake? 1/40th the size